When father left the family, mother and sister started demanding money from me and criticizing me to become a guardian. Hi, Reddit. I'm Logan, 34, and I'm in a situation I honestly don't know how to fix. Maybe you all can help me see things clearer or tell me if I'm completely off the mark. To make things simple, I'll start with the basics. I have a well-paying job. I work as an operations manager at a logistics company, and while it's not a dream job, it pays the bills and then some. The problem? My family acts like I'm a human ATM, and I'm starting to crack under the pressure. Growing up, it was just me, my mom Diane, and my two younger sisters, Amanda and Grace. My dad left when I was 12, so I stepped into the man-of-the-house role early. At the time, it felt natural. Mom worked long hours as a nurse, and I'd do what I could to help. Watch my sisters, clean the house, whatever needed to be done. But somewhere along the way, that sense of responsibility turned into expectation, and now, decades later, it feels like my family hasn't grown out of seeing me as their safety net. Take last Christmas, for example. Amanda, my middle sister, came up with the bright idea to rent a cabin for the holidays. It sounded nice at first. Snow-covered mountains, cozy fires, family time. But when the costs started rolling in, it became clear that family time meant Logan pays, the cabin rental, groceries, decorations, even the gas money for Amanda and Grace to drive there. It all came out of my pocket. I tried pushing back, saying maybe we should scale things down. But Mom gave me that look she always does, the one that says, "You don't want to disappoint your family, do you?" And so, I paid. Like always. Fast forward to now, and I've started to resent it. I've been saving for a down payment on a house, something for myself for once. But every time I get close to hitting my goal, there's another family emergency. Grace needs help with her student loans. Amanda's car broke down. Mom's air conditioner stopped working in the middle of summer. None of it feels like an emergency to me, but try telling them that. Last week, things hit a boiling point. Amanda called, and as soon as I saw her name on my phone, I knew it wasn't just a chat. Sure enough, she launched into a spiel about how she's planning a big family reunion this summer. She talked about how it would be a chance to bring everyone together and how much it would mean to Mom, but she didn't get to the real point until the end. So, she said, dragging out the word like she was nervous, I was thinking, you could help with the costs? Just a little? Like, maybe cover the venue? It's only $3,000, and we could pay you back. Eventually, I lost it. For the first time in years, I told her no. Not I'll think about it, or maybe, but a firm, unshakable no. Amanda didn't take it well. She said I was being selfish, that I didn't care about family, that I was letting money control me. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, Mom called, and I could tell Amanda had gotten to her. Mom started in on how family was the most important thing in the world, how we needed to stick together, and how my dad's absence had been so hard on all of them. It felt like emotional blackmail, and I told her as much. She gasped, like I'd slapped her, and hung up without saying goodbye. Now, the whole family is mad at me. Grace hasn't called in weeks. Amanda is posting passive-aggressive quotes about selfishness on Facebook, and Mom has been too busy to answer my calls. I thought standing up for myself would feel empowering, but mostly I just feel guilty. Guilty and tired. That's where I thought the story would end. Me, finally setting boundaries, and my family being upset but eventually moving on. But then, something happened that threw everything into chaos. It started with a message from Amanda's ex-boyfriend, Eric. I hadn't spoken to the guy in years, but he reached out on Facebook, saying he needed to talk about something important. I almost didn't reply, but curiosity got the better of me. When we finally spoke, Eric dropped a bombshell. Amanda had been lying to me about her finances for years. According to Eric, Amanda's car didn't actually break down last year. She used the money I gave her to go on a week-long vacation to Mexico with her friends. And those student loans Grace needed help with? She used the money to buy a designer handbag. Eric even claimed that Mom had been in on it, spinning sob stories to guilt me into giving them money they didn't actually need. I didn't want to believe it, but Eric sent me screenshots, texts between him and Amanda, photos of her in Cancun, receipts that didn't match her claims. It was undeniable. I felt like an idiot, like I'd been played by the people I trusted most. I confronted Amanda first. She denied everything at first, saying Eric was just trying to cause drama. But when I showed her the screenshots, she broke down. She said she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she just needed a break and didn't know how else to ask for help. I didn't buy it. I told her I was done being her personal bank and that if she wanted my trust back, she'd have to earn it. Next, I called Grace. She admitted to the handbag, but said she felt pressured by Mom and Amanda to keep up the act. She apologized, but it didn't feel like enough. Finally, I called Mom, and that conversation was the hardest. She didn't deny anything. Instead, she said, I did what I had to do to keep this family together. I told her that wasn't her decision to make, that I wasn't their lifeline, and that if they kept this up, I'd walk away for good. She cried, but I didn't let her guilt me this time. I hung up feeling more alone than ever, but also strangely free. If you're still reading, thanks for sticking with me. I'm not sure where to go from here, but for now, I'm focusing on myself for the first time in years. It's scary, but it feels like the right thing to do. Christmas was supposed to be about family and joy, but for me, it was just a massive bill waiting to be paid. This year, it reached a breaking point. I'd already spent over $8,000 on holiday gifts and preparations, enough to make anyone's jaw drop. Between the cabin rental Amanda insisted on, the endless decorations, the catered dinner Grace swore we needed, and gifts for everyone, I thought I'd done more than enough. But apparently, my mother, Diane, didn't think so. It all started 2 weeks before Christmas. I was sitting at my kitchen table, going through my finances and mentally preparing myself for a quiet night when Mom called. She didn't waste any time. Logan, I found the perfect gift for me this year, she said, her voice brimming with excitement. I should have known right then it was going to be trouble. Oh, what is it? I asked, trying to sound interested while silently hoping it wasn't something extravagant. A designer handbag, she said, as casually as if she were asking for a scarf. It's from that new collection by Melis Trenoir. You know, the one all the celebrities are raving about. I wasn't entirely clueless about fashion, but I'd never heard of Melis Trenoir. How much are we talking about? I asked, bracing myself. Only $5,500, she said. I laughed, thinking she had to be joking. Mom, I've already spent over $8,000 on Christmas this year. That's insane. Her tone immediately shifted. Logan, I raised you better than this. I never asked for much growing up, but this is something I really want. I get that, I said, trying to keep calm, but I can't afford to spend that kind of money on one gift. I'm already stretched thin as it is. She paused for a moment, then hit me with the ultimatum I never saw coming. Well, if I don't get that bag, I'm not celebrating Christmas. You'll have to find someone else to host, and you can explain to everyone why their mother isn't there. I was stunned. Are you serious right now? As serious as I've ever been, she said, her voice icy. It's about time someone does something nice for me. I couldn't believe it. This was supposed to be a time of giving, of gratitude, but here she was, holding Christmas hostage over a $5,500 handbag. Mom, this isn't fair, I said. I've already done so much for the family. You can't keep expecting me to carry all of this. You always say that, she snapped. But when has it ever been too much for you? You're the one with the stable job. You're the one who can afford it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up, knowing that any further conversation would just make things worse. The fallout was immediate. Amanda called the next day, accusing me of ruining Christmas. You know how much Mom does for us, she said. The least you could do is get her one nice thing. Amanda, do you even hear yourself? I shot back. This isn't about one nice thing. It's about a $5,000 bag. It's about years of me being treated like a piggy bank. Well, maybe if you weren't so uptight, we wouldn't have to ask, she said before hanging up. Grace wasn't any better. She sent me a text that simply read, "Wow, I didn't know you hated Mom so much. I felt like I was living in some kind of nightmare. The people who were supposed to care about me, who were supposed to understand, were acting like I was the villain." I spent the next few days trying to focus on work, but the tension in the back of my mind was relentless. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected another guilt trip from Amanda or Mom. Then, the situation took an even darker turn. One evening, while I was on my way home from work, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was from a sales associate at a luxury boutique in town. She said she'd been contacted by my mother, who'd put the handbag on hold under my name. Apparently, Mom had told her I'd be coming by to pay for it. I was furious. I thanked the associate for the call, then immediately dialed Mom. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I demanded as soon as she picked up. "Logan, calm down," she said, completely unbothered. "I was just helping you out. I knew you'd come around." "Come around? Are you serious? You had no right to do that." "Well, maybe I wouldn't have to if you weren't being so selfish," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm your mother, Logan. Do you really think I don't deserve this after everything I've done for you?" That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. "You know what, Mom? Go ahead and cancel Christmas. I'm done. If you want to be petty over a stupid handbag, fine. But don't expect me to be part of it." She started to respond, but I hung up before she could get another word in. For the first time in years, I decided to put my foot down. I called Amanda and Grace and told them exactly what had happened. I expected them to side with Mom, but to my surprise, they were quiet. Amanda mumbled something about how Mom had been acting weird lately, while Grace admitted she'd noticed the same thing. It wasn't much, but it felt like a crack in the armor of guilt they'd built around me. Christmas came and went without much fanfare. I spent the day at a friend's house, trying to push away the nagging feeling of guilt. Meanwhile, Mom stayed true to her word. She didn't host, didn't call, didn't even send a card. For the first time, I realized how conditional her love really was. I don't know where we go from here. Part of me wants to reach out, to try to mend things, but another part of me knows I can't keep living like this. If my family can't accept me for who I am, and not just for what I can give, then maybe it's time to start carving out a life of my own. I thought standing my ground over the designer bag fiasco would finally earn me some peace. Instead, it felt like I'd declared war on my own family. The fallout came fast and hard, and no matter what I did, it seemed like everyone in my life had something to say about my decision. Amanda and Grace were the first to chime in. The day after I told Mom to cancel Christmas, Amanda called me. Her tone was sharp, and she didn't waste time getting to the point. "Logan, what the hell is wrong with you?" she started. "Mom's devastated. Do you even realize how much this is hurting her?" I sighed, already exhausted by the conversation. "Amanda, this isn't about hurting Mom. It's about boundaries. I can't keep spending thousands of dollars just to make everyone happy." "Boundaries?" she scoffed. "You're using boundaries as an excuse to be selfish. She's our mother, Logan. She's done so much for us, and now you're acting like a spoiled brat because she asked for one nice thing." "It's not about the bag," I said, trying to keep my cool. "It's about the fact that she's manipulating everyone into thinking I'm the bad guy because I won't buy her something ridiculously expensive." "She's not manipulating anyone," Amanda snapped. "She's just hurt. And honestly, so are Grace and I. We've always looked up to you, but now it feels like you don't care about this family anymore." I wanted to scream, but instead, I hung up, knowing nothing I said would change her mind. Grace wasn't any better. She called later that night, her voice trembling with what I assumed was frustration. "Logan, I don't understand why you're doing this," she said. "Mom's done everything for us. The least you could do is show some gratitude." "I have shown gratitude," I said, "for years. But this isn't about gratitude anymore. It's about respect. She doesn't respect my boundaries, and neither do you or Amanda." "Boundaries?" Grace repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's such a cop-out. You're just trying to justify being a jerk." I couldn't take it anymore. "You know what, Grace? Believe whatever you want. I'm done trying to explain myself to people who don't actually care about how I feel." I hung up before she could respond. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my father, Henry, decided to weigh in. To be clear, my dad and I have never been particularly close. He left when I was 12, and while we've kept in touch over the years, our relationship has always been more cordial than warm. So when he called out of the blue, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Hey, son," he started, his tone casual. I heard about what's been going on with your mom. Let me guess, I said, already bracing myself. She told you I'm ruining Christmas. Well, not in those exact words, he said with a chuckle. But she's definitely upset. I sighed, waiting for the inevitable lecture, but to my surprise, it didn't come. Instead, he said, "Look, Logan, I get it. Your mom can be a lot sometimes, but maybe you should just buy the bag." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What? Just hear me out, he said. I'm not saying she's right, and I'm not saying you're wrong. But sometimes, it's easier to keep the peace than to fight over something that, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really matter. It matters to me, I said. This isn't just about the bag, Dad. It's about years of being treated like a walking wallet. I'm tired of it. I get that, he said. I really do. But trust me, the longer you drag this out, the worse it's going to get. Sometimes, you have to pick your battles. It wasn't the worst advice I'd ever heard, but it wasn't what I needed to hear either. I thanked him for his input and ended the call, feeling more alone than ever. And then, there was Facebook. I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but Mom took her grievances to social media like it was her personal courtroom. Her posts were vague enough to avoid directly naming me, but pointed enough that everyone who knew us understood exactly who she was talking about. Some people forget what family really means, she wrote in one post. It's sad when the people you've sacrificed the most for are the ones who treat you the worst. In another, she shared a photo of the handbag with a caption that read, "All I wanted for Christmas was this." I guess even that was too much to ask for. Disappointed, but not surprised. The comments were filled with sympathy from her friends and extended family. "You deserve so much better, Diane," one person wrote. "Some people just don't appreciate what they have," said another. It was like watching a smear campaign against me unfold in real time. What hurt the most was seeing Amanda and Grace chiming in, liking her posts and adding their own comments. "Mom, you've always been the glue that holds this family together," Amanda wrote under one post. "We'll make sure you have the Christmas you deserve, even if some people don't want to help." I wanted to scream. I wanted to defend myself, to tell everyone the truth about what was really going on, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Mom had already painted me as the villain, and nothing I said would change their minds. The breaking point came when one of Mom's friends, a woman I barely knew, sent me a private message. "Logan, I don't know what's going on between you and your mom, but life's too short to hold grudges. She loves you more than anything, and all she wants is to feel appreciated. Maybe you should think about that." I stared at the message, my hands shaking with anger. How had my life come to this? How had I become the bad guy for refusing to buy a $5,500 handbag? That night, I sat alone in my apartment, scrolling through Mom's posts and the endless stream of comments. I thought about calling her, about trying to make her understand how much she was hurting me, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Mom didn't want to understand. She wanted control, and as long as I kept standing my ground, she'd keep fighting to get it back. For the first time in my life, I considered cutting her out completely. The thought scared me, but it also felt like the only way to reclaim my life. I'd always considered myself a private person. Growing up, I was taught to keep family matters in the family, to handle things quietly and without outside interference. But this time was different. This time, I felt like I was drowning, and no one in my immediate circle seemed to care. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I shared my story on Reddit. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I spent hours drafting the post, writing and rewriting it, trying to make sure I wasn't coming off as overly bitter or vindictive. I just wanted the truth out there, about the years of financial strain, the constant manipulation, and the ridiculous ultimatum over the designer bag. I titled it something simple, like, "My family is holding Christmas hostage over a $5,500 handbag," and hit post. I didn't expect much to come of it. Maybe a few comments telling me to hold my ground or commiserating about similar experiences. Instead, the post blew up in ways I could never have imagined. Within hours, it had thousands of upvotes and hundreds of comments. By the end of the week, it was on the front page of the subreddit, with over 1 million views and tens of thousands of replies. The support was overwhelming. People from all over the world shared their own stories of manipulative family members and financial strain, offering advice, encouragement, and solidarity. Some comments were straightforward. You're absolutely in the right. Don't let them guilt you into this. Others were more emotional. Reading this broke my heart because I've been in your shoes. Stay strong. A few even offered to chip in for a Christmas celebration that didn't involve my family, though I politely declined. For the first time in weeks, I felt validated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was just a guy trying to set boundaries, and that was okay. One comment, in particular, caught my eye. It was from my Aunt Karen, my dad's younger sister. Karen and I hadn't spoken much over the years. She lived a few states away and wasn't particularly close to my mom, but she'd seen the post and reached out directly. Logan, her comment began, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I always knew your mom could be intense, but this is a whole new level. If you don't want to spend Christmas with them, you're more than welcome to come here. I'd be happy to host, and I promise it won't cost you a dime. Her offer felt like a lifeline. I messaged her privately, thanking her for the invitation and explaining that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. She assured me there was no pressure, but the door was always open. In the meantime, my friends and coworkers started stepping up in ways I didn't expect. One morning at work, I walked into the break room to find a small gift bag on the counter with my name on it. Inside was a cheap knockoff handbag, clearly meant as a joke, and a note that read, "For your mom." Problem solved. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. Another day, my colleague Beth stopped by my desk with a tray of cookies. Just thought you could use a little extra sweetness in your life, she said with a wink. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. Even my boss, a usually reserved man named Greg, got in on the action. During our weekly team meeting, he brought up the concept of boundaries, under the guise of professional development, and ended his talk with, and remember, sometimes saying no is the most productive thing you can do. Right, Logan? The whole room erupted in laughter, and for once, I didn't mind being the center of attention. Outside of work, my best friend Ryan became my unofficial therapist. He'd seen the Reddit post and immediately called me, demanding every detail I hadn't included. Dude, he said after I'd finished recounting everything, your family is straight up nuts. Like, reality TV level nuts. Are you sure you're not secretly part of a social experiment? Pretty sure, I said with a laugh. Though if I am, I hope there's a fat paycheck waiting for me at the end. Ryan didn't just listen, he acted. One Saturday, he showed up at my apartment with a Christmas tree strapped to the roof of his car and a box of ornaments under his arm. If your family's not going to do Christmas right, we will, he said. For the next few hours, we decorated the tree, drank spiked eggnog, and blasted cheesy holiday music. It wasn't the Christmas I'd envisioned, but it was exactly what I needed. Meanwhile, my mom's passive-aggressive Facebook campaign was still in full swing. Every day, it seemed like she had a new post designed to paint me as the villain. My personal favorite was a photo of her sitting next to a bare Christmas tree with the caption, "No gifts this year, but at least I have my memories." Some people will never understand. Her friends ate it up, of course, showering her with sympathy and outrage on her behalf. But the tide started to turn when a few of my own friends, who'd seen the post on Reddit, began commenting with the truth. Maybe the person you're talking about is tired of being manipulated, one wrote. Another said, funny how this story changes when you hear the whole thing. You might want to ask Logan about it before jumping to conclusions. Mom didn't respond to those comments. She never did when someone challenged her, but it felt good to know I wasn't alone in calling her out. As Christmas approached, I made my decision. I called Karen and told her I'd take her up on her offer. She was thrilled, and within days, she'd planned an entire celebration. She invited a few of my cousins, cooked a massive feast, and even set up a little gift exchange, insisting I didn't need to bring anything. That Christmas was one of the best I'd ever had. It was simple, warm, and full of genuine love, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing for so long. Karen pulled me aside at one point, giving me a tight hug and saying, "You deserve to be happy, Logan. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." For the first time in years, I believed her. The decision not to buy the bag felt like a line in the sand. I had wrestled with it for weeks, torn between guilt and the nagging sense that enough was enough. But once I made up my mind, I knew there was no going back. I wasn't going to let my family manipulate me into another financial black hole. Not this time. What sealed the deal for me wasn't just their constant pressure or the guilt-tripping Facebook posts. It was the realization that my efforts were never enough. No matter how much I gave, how much I spent, or how much I sacrificed, it was never acknowledged. It was only expected. Something had to change. The idea to donate the gifts came from Ryan, my best friend. We were sitting in my apartment, staring at the pile of wrapped presents I'd already bought for my family. They represented hours of shopping, careful planning, and more money than I cared to admit. "What are you going to do with all that?" Ryan asked, gesturing to the mountain of boxes. "I don't know," I admitted. "It feels pointless now. I mean, they don't even appreciate it." He leaned back, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Why not donate them?" I blinked at him. "Donate?" "Yeah," he said. "There's probably a shelter or a community center that could use them. Think about it. You'll be doing something good, and it's a giant middle finger to your family at the same time. Win-win." I laughed, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Why let the gifts sit there as a painful reminder of their entitlement when they could actually bring joy to someone who needed it? The next day, I loaded the gifts into my car and drove to a local community center. I explained the situation, minus the family drama, to the woman at the front desk, a kind, middle-aged volunteer named Marcy. Her eyes lit up as I handed over the brightly wrapped packages. "You have no idea how much this will mean to the families we're helping," she said, her voice warm. "Thank you for doing this." For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. This was the right thing to do. When my mom found out, though, she was livid. I hadn't planned to tell her, but Amanda must have noticed the missing gifts during one of her visits to my apartment. Mom called me immediately, her voice sharp and accusatory. "What the hell is wrong with you, Logan?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? For the family? Embarrassing?" I shot back. "Mom, I donated those gifts to people who actually appreciate them. Maybe if you and Amanda and Grace had shown even a little gratitude, things wouldn't have come to this." "Gratitude?" she practically screamed. "You've humiliated me, Logan. You've made me look like a fool in front of my own daughters." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. "Mom, this isn't about you looking like a fool. This is about me finally standing up for myself. If you can't see that, I don't know what else to say." She hung up on me, and I spent the rest of the day alternating between anger and sadness. No matter how hard I tried, it felt like I was always the villain in her eyes. As Christmas approached, the family split became inevitable. Mom and my sisters decided to hold a small get-together at her house, refusing to invite me. Amanda posted a photo of their plans on Facebook, with a caption that read, "Some people just don't understand the importance of family." Grace chimed in with a comment about how proud she was to celebrate with real family. It stung, but I wasn't surprised. Meanwhile, Karen had gone all out. She invited me to her home, along with a handful of cousins I hadn't seen in years. Her husband, Tom, was a retired chef and had planned a feast that rivaled anything I'd ever experienced. Their two kids, Ellie and Nathan, were ecstatic to see me, peppering me with questions about my job and cracking jokes that actually made me laugh for the first time in weeks. Karen even arranged a gift exchange, despite my protests. "You're part of this family, Logan," she said firmly, "and we take care of our own." On Christmas Eve, as I sat in Karen's living room surrounded by warmth and laughter, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was what the holidays were supposed to feel like. Not an obligation, not a chore, but a genuine celebration of love and togetherness. Of course, my mom couldn't let things go quietly. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed with a notification. She'd tagged me in a Facebook post. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Christmas isn't the same without all of my children," the post read, accompanied by a photo of her and my sisters sitting around a sparsely decorated tree. The caption was dripping with passive aggressiveness, and I knew it was meant to guilt me into feeling like I'd abandoned them. I showed Karen the post, half expecting her to tell me to let it go. Instead, she rolled her eyes. "Your mom needs to get a grip," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tom chuckled, and even Ellie chimed in with a sarcastic, "Wow, What a great way to spread holiday cheer. Their support meant everything. For once, I didn't feel alone in dealing with my family's antics. As the night went on, Karen pulled me aside. "Logan," she said, her tone serious. "You've spent so much of your life trying to make everyone else happy. It's time you start thinking about what makes you happy." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She was right. For too long, I'd let guilt and obligation dictate my choices. It was time to start living for myself. When Christmas morning arrived, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls. Karen's kids were tearing into their gifts, their laughter echoing through the house. I couldn't stop smiling. Later that afternoon, as I helped Tom clean up from lunch, I realized something. I didn't miss the drama of my family's usual celebrations. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. After Christmas, I expected the dust to settle, for everyone to move on. Instead, it felt like my mom, Diana, doubled down on her campaign against me. Her Facebook posts, which had already been passive-aggressive during the holidays, became outright emotional appeals designed to tug at the heartstrings of anyone willing to listen. One post featured a photo of our family from years ago, all smiles and matching sweaters, with the caption, "When family meant something." I miss those days. Some people forget what really matters. It was followed by a flood of comments from her friends, offering sympathy and outrage on her behalf. A few relatives chimed in, expressing their sadness about the situation but steering clear of taking sides. At least, that's how it started. As the weeks went on, something unexpected began to happen. Relatives who'd initially shown support for Mom started asking her uncomfortable questions. My cousin Lindsay, who had seen both my Reddit post and Mom's Facebook activity, commented under one of her posts, "Why is this Logan's fault? Didn't he pay for most of Christmas for years? Maybe it's time for the rest of the family to step up." Another relative, Aunt Denise, asked directly, "Diane, if Logan needed a break this year, why didn't you just accept it? He's done so much for all of you." Mom's responses to these comments were either evasive or overly dramatic. She'd claim people didn't understand the full story or accuse them of attacking her during a vulnerable time. But the damage was done. The narrative she tried so hard to control was slipping away, and for the first time, people were starting to see through her act. Amanda and Grace, however, weren't as quick to let go. They continued to accuse me of destroying a family tradition every chance they got. Amanda called me one evening, her voice sharp with anger. "I hope you're happy," she said. "Mom's been crying for days. She's talking about canceling next Christmas, too. Are you seriously okay with ruining everything?" "Ruining everything?" I repeated, incredulous. "Amanda, I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped playing along with this ridiculous charade. If you care so much, why don't you step up for once?" "That's not the point," she snapped. "The point is, you've always been the one to hold this family together. Now you're just throwing it all away." "I'm not throwing anything away," I said firmly. "I'm just done being used. If that's what holding this family together means, then maybe it's time for someone else to do it." She hung up without another word. Grace, meanwhile, took a different approach. Instead of calling, she sent me long, guilt-ridden texts about how disappointed she was, how she couldn't believe I'd turned my back on everything Mom has done for us. At first, I tried responding, explaining my side of things, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't interested in hearing me out. Her texts became more accusatory with each exchange, and eventually, I stopped replying altogether. Despite their efforts to pull me back into the cycle, I stayed firm. For the first time in my life, I chose to prioritize myself. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the guilt crept in, when I wondered if I was being too harsh, or if I should just give in for the sake of peace. But those moments were fleeting, replaced by a growing sense of relief and freedom. I threw myself into my work, taking on new projects and responsibilities that challenged me in ways I hadn't experienced before. My boss, Greg, noticed my renewed focus and even pulled me aside one day to commend me. "You've been killing it lately, Logan," he said. "Keep this up, and there might be a promotion in your future." Outside of work, I started rediscovering what it meant to have a life. I reconnected with old friends, started going to the gym regularly, and even picked up a new hobby, photography. I'd always been interested in it, but never had the time or energy to pursue it. Now, with the weight of my family's expectations lifted, I found myself carrying my camera everywhere, capturing moments of beauty and stillness that reminded me why life was worth living. One day, while walking through a park near my apartment, I ran into a woman named Claire. She was a fellow photographer, and we struck up a conversation about lighting and composition. That conversation turned into coffee, which turned into dinner a few weeks later. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine connection with someone who saw me for who I was, not what I could provide. Meanwhile, Mom continued her online crusade. Her posts became increasingly dramatic, filled with vague references to betrayal and heartbreak. But as more relatives started asking questions, her audience began to dwindle. The same people who had once rushed to her defense were now backing away, unwilling to get caught in the crossfire of her grievances. One evening, Aunt Karen called me, her voice filled with warmth and pride. "Logan, I just want you to know how proud I am of you," she said. "Standing up to your mom isn't easy, but you did the right thing. And honestly, it's about time someone called her out." "Thanks, Karen," I said, my throat tightening. I don't know if it's made a difference, but it feels good to finally put myself first. "It's made a difference," she said firmly. "Maybe not for her, but for you. And that's what matters." As the weeks turned into months, the drama surrounding my decision began to fade. Amanda and Grace still weren't speaking to me, and Mom's posts had become less frequent, though no less passive-aggressive. But I no longer felt the need to check her page or defend myself against their accusations. For the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to not be guilty all the time. It was liberating, and I wasn't about to give that up. It didn't happen overnight, but the ripple effects of my decision to step away from the toxic cycle started to become more apparent. The Facebook drama from Mom, Diana, had become less of a daily event and more of a sporadic occurrence, likely because people weren't reacting the way she expected anymore. What had started as a flood of sympathetic comments under her posts had dwindled to a trickle, and in some cases, those comments weren't exactly supportive. My cousin Lindsay, who had always been blunt to a fault, left a comment under one of Mom's more recent posts. This one had featured a photo of her looking dramatically out of a window with the caption, "Some people will never understand the sacrifices a mother makes." Lindsay wrote, "Maybe some mothers should also recognize when they're asking too much." Just saying. I laughed when I saw it, not because it was funny, but because it was so true. Others seemed to agree, with a few relatives liking the comment and even adding their own subtle critiques. My Aunt Denise, who had remained relatively neutral during the earlier drama, finally chimed in as well. "Diana, maybe it's time to let this go," Denise wrote. "Logan has done a lot for this family. It's okay to let him have some space." Mom didn't respond directly, but her post became noticeably less pointed after that. I couldn't tell if she was genuinely reflecting or just realizing that her usual tactics weren't working anymore. Either way, it felt like a small victory. One day, out of the blue, Grace called me. I was at work when my phone buzzed, her name flashing across the screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Hey," she replied. There was a pause before she continued. "Look, I've been thinking about everything that happened over Christmas." I waited, unsure of where this was going. Grace wasn't exactly known for admitting when she was wrong. "And?" I prompted. "And I think Mom might have been overreacting," she said, her voice hesitant. "I'm not saying you handled everything perfectly, but I can see why you were upset. It wasn't an apology, not even close, but it was the closest thing to an olive branch I'd gotten from any of them." "Thanks, Grace," I said. "That means a lot." She quickly changed the subject after that, asking about work and my new hobby, photography. It wasn't a deep conversation, but it felt like the beginning of something, a chance to rebuild at least one relationship on healthier terms. Work, meanwhile, was thriving. After months of pouring my energy into projects and stepping up whenever there was an opportunity, I was finally recognized for my efforts. Greg, my boss, called me into his office one afternoon and offered me a promotion. It wasn't just a title change, either. The raise and additional responsibilities were significant enough to make a real difference in my life. "You've earned this, Logan," Greg said, shaking my hand. I can't wait to see what you do in this new role. I left the office that day feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I'd been stuck in the mindset that everything I did had to serve someone else. My family, their expectations, their demands. Now, for the first time, I was achieving something purely for myself. That night, I sat down with a glass of wine and started researching vacations. I hadn't taken a proper trip in years, and the thought of getting away from everything, of experiencing something new and exciting, was intoxicating. After hours of browsing, I settled on a 2-week trip to Italy. I booked flights and accommodations, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and disbelief. This was really happening. As the weeks went on, I started sharing my travel plans with friends and coworkers. Ryan, my best friend, was particularly thrilled for me. "Dude, you're going to love Italy," he said. "And you deserve this. Seriously. After everything, you've earned it." Even my colleagues were supportive, offering recommendations and tips for making the most of the trip. Beth, who had always been something of a foodie, gave me a list of restaurants to check out. "You have to try the carbonara in Rome," she said. "It'll change your life." As for my family, I kept the trip to myself. I knew they'd see it as another example of me being selfish, and I wasn't interested in their opinions. This was my time, and I wasn't going to let anyone ruin it. One evening, as I was packing for the trip, I got a message from Aunt Karen. She'd been one of my biggest supporters throughout everything, and I'd kept her in the loop about my plans. "I'm so proud of you, Logan," her message read. "You've come so far, and I hope this trip is everything you need it to be. Enjoy every moment. You've earned it." I smiled as I read her words, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. For so long, I'd been consumed by guilt and obligation, by the endless demands of people who only saw me as a means to an end. Now, for the first time, I was learning what it meant to truly live for myself. The night before my flight, Grace called me again. This time, her tone was softer, almost wistful. "I heard you're going to Italy," she said. "That sounds amazing." "It will be," I said, smiling. "I hope you have a great time," she said. There was a pause before she added, "And thanks for everything you've done for the family. Even if we don't always say it, we do appreciate it." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. I never imagined that my decision to share my family drama on Reddit would resonate with so many people. Initially, I had posted it as a way to vent, to get some advice, and maybe connect with others who had been through similar situations. But within days, my story exploded. The post gained traction faster than I could have anticipated, and soon, it was impossible to keep up with the sheer volume of comments and messages. When I checked the post the morning after it went viral, I couldn't believe my eyes. There were tens of thousands of comments, and the upvotes were in the hundreds of thousands. My inbox was flooded with private messages, everything from personal stories to heartfelt words of encouragement. The comments ranged from supportive to deeply personal. People shared their own struggles with manipulative families, their experiences with setting boundaries, and even the fallout they faced as a result. One user wrote, "Reading your post gave me the courage to finally tell my mom I can't keep paying her bills. Thank you for sharing your story." Another wrote, "You're not selfish, Logan. You're strong. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." One message stood out in particular. It was from a woman named Eleanor, who wrote, "Your story saved me. I've been stuck in a toxic cycle with my family for years, but after reading your post, I finally realized I'm not alone. Thank you for giving me the courage to take a stand." I sat there staring at her words, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite put into words. To think that something as simple as sharing my story could have such a profound impact on someone else, it was humbling. As the days went on, media outlets started picking up the post. I received emails from journalists asking if they could interview me or feature my story in their articles. At first, I was hesitant. The idea of putting my personal life under even more scrutiny made me nervous, but ultimately, I decided to participate, anonymously, of course. If sharing my experience could help others, then it was worth it. One article titled, "Breaking the Cycle of Family Manipulation," a viral Reddit post inspires thousands, went particularly viral. It framed my story as a call to action for anyone dealing with toxic relationships, emphasizing the importance of boundaries and self-care. The article quoted some of the top comments from the post, highlighting how my story had given others the courage to take control of their lives. The support wasn't just online. In real life, people around me began to take notice. At work, my colleague Beth approached me one morning with a grin on her face. "So, are you going to tell us you're famous now?" she teased, holding up her phone to show me one of the articles featuring my story. I laughed, feeling a little embarrassed. "Hardly famous," I said. "I just posted something on Reddit." "Well, whatever you did, it's amazing," she said. "You've inspired so many people, including me." Even my boss, Greg, brought it up during a team meeting. "Logan, I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're proud of you," he said. "Setting boundaries is hard, but it's one of the most important things you can do. Keep being an example." The unexpected outpouring of support helped me in ways I didn't expect. For so long, I had felt isolated in my struggles, like no one truly understood what I was going through. But now, I realized that I wasn't alone. There were thousands, maybe even millions, of people out there dealing with similar challenges, and we were all stronger together. The post even brought a few surprises. A user who went by Kind Karen reached out to me, claiming to be a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. She offered to give me a free consultation session, saying she admired my courage and wanted to help. I took her up on the offer, and our session was transformative. She helped me unpack years of guilt and obligation, giving me tools to better navigate my relationship with my family moving forward. But not everyone was thrilled about my newfound viral fame. Amanda and Grace both found the post and were furious. Amanda texted me a long rant, accusing me of airing dirty laundry and making the family look bad. Grace, surprisingly, was more measured in her response. "I get why you posted it," she wrote, "but I wish you'd talk to us first. It feels like you're painting us all as villains." I didn't respond right away. I needed time to process her words. When I finally did reply, I kept it simple. "Grace, I didn't post it to hurt anyone. I posted it because I needed support, and I wasn't getting it from my family. Maybe that says more about our dynamic than it does about me." She never responded, but that was okay. I wasn't looking for validation from them anymore. In the weeks that followed, my life continued to change. I started receiving invitations to speak at small community events about setting boundaries and dealing with toxic relationships. One organization, called Family First, Boundaries Second, even asked if they could use my story in their workshops. I agreed, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. One evening, as I was scrolling through the comments on my post, I saw a message from a user who claimed to be an old friend of my dad's. He wrote, "Logan, I knew your father back in the day. He'd be proud of you for standing up for yourself. You've got more strength than you realize." I wasn't sure if the message was genuine, but it didn't matter. His words stayed with me. The impact of the post wasn't just external. It changed me, too. For years, I'd been stuck in a cycle of guilt and obligation, unable to imagine a life where I wasn't constantly trying to appease my family. But now, I felt free. Free to focus on myself, to pursue my own happiness, and to set boundaries without fear. I started planning my next steps, ways to use this newfound strength to build a life I could be proud of. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful, and it all started with one simple post on Reddit.